Max Verstappen arrived at Zandvoort expecting a celebration of dominance, yet instead found himself confronting a transformed Red Bull culture that now feels more like a boardroom on wheels than the free-flowing racing empire he once thrived in. Overnight, the atmosphere of autonomy that defined Red Bull's operations has shifted under the leadership of new CEO Laurent Mekies, who has centralized control and standardized decision-making in a way that fundamentally alters how Verstappen can operate on track. For years, Red Bull's advantage was not just its horsepower or downforce, but the freedom it gave Verstappen and his core trio, his race engineer, performance engineer, and strategist, to bend plans in real time. Under Mekies, that triangle has been converted into just one spoke of a tightly controlled hub, a CEO-centric command structure where risk tolerance is standardized, decision trees are locked in advance, and deviations are only permitted if they fit small pre-approved windows. While this system may provide consistency after months of turbulence inside the organization, it risks cutting off the very instincts that made Red Bull lethal in unpredictable situations. Mekies' approach is rooted in process. His background emphasizes rigorous scenario modeling, conservative margins, and heavy reliance on simulations before any green flag. This means Verstappen and his pit wall must now justify gambles with model-based probabilities instead of raw driver feel. The practical impact is clear: later calls on undercuts, fewer opportunistic tire flips, and stricter adherence to energy and fuel targets that cannot be relaxed simply because Verstappen senses his tires will hold. The driver radio dynamic also changes, with fewer open debates and more confirmatory standby acknowledgments, a style that may cost precious seconds in chaotic races such as Zandvoort, where split-second decisions define outcomes. Even car setup decisions are no longer entirely Verstappen's domain. Previously, he could demand an aggressive front-end balance to suit his rotation-heavy style, even if it meant the rear of the car became unstable over bumps. Now, compromises designed to protect correlation fidelity and data consistency are prioritized, ensuring broader stability but dulling the sharp, knife-edge handling that Verstappen converts into lap time when conditions turn chaotic. Brake-by-wire systems, differential maps, and engine deployment modes are also expected to fall under narrower libraries, with fewer on-the-fly adjustments allowed for Verstappen to tailor mid-race. Even pit stops become less freeform, with stacking rules, tighter release windows, and stricter no-go zones around congestion in the pit lane, meaning Red Bull sacrifices opportunistic flexibility in the name of operational safety. At Zandvoort, a track notorious for its tight layout, unpredictable safety cars, and the importance of track position, these restrictions loom even larger. The Dutch Grand Prix has historically rewarded Verstappen's ability to improvise, seizing micro-moments by covering undercuts one lap earlier than models predict or daring rivals into compound gambles they may not want to follow. Under Mekies' framework, such moves are less likely. Strategy calls must meet pre-authorized thresholds. For example, no reactive pit stop unless undercut deltas exceed a specific figure sustained across multiple laps, with pit lane congestion indices factored in before approval. While this reduces knee-jerk errors, it also delays decisive covers that have historically secured Verstappen's dominance at his home circuit. Safety cars, a hallmark of Zandvoort, will further expose the contrast. Under the old driver-led system, Verstappen could dive into the pits during a marginal safety car window if he felt the tires dropping or sensed track evolution favoring a different compound. Under the new CEO-driven approach, pit stops during a safety car will likely only be authorized if they align with predefined windows and meet probability standards for a clean release, meaning missed opportunities could hand rivals a foothold. Tire strategy illustrates the cultural divide further. Old Red Bull would start Verstappen on softs, banking on an early explosive lead with a conversion to mediums or hards later, even if it carried risk. New Red Bull leans towards safer medium-soft or medium-hard sequences that minimize variance, reduce exposure to badly timed safety cars, and satisfy process-driven consistency, but simultaneously blunt Verstappen's signature opening laps, where he uses aggression and confidence in rotation to gap the field under the roar of the home crowd. The shift also enforces stricter team orders. Where previously Verstappen could count on real-time improvisation to free him into clean air, Mekies' model prioritizes maximizing delta to rivals across both cars. That means the second Red Bull may be strategically deployed as a buffer rather than a support for Verstappen's clean racing lines, ensuring constructors' points but curbing Verstappen's individual dominance. Beyond strategy and machinery, the human element takes center stage. Verstappen's competitive edge is not just speed, but his courage to commit before data confirms it. Bureaucratic structures now demand confirmation first, slowing his instinctive calls. The change will be audible on team radios, shorter acknowledgements, fewer exploratory requests, and a shift from collaborative co-authorship with his engineer to implementing pre-approved plans. Instead of Verstappen's famous "box now, trust me," the communication becomes "recommend plan B, do tire drop, request authorization," a delay that erodes his ability to exploit chaos. This friction carries a psychological tax, particularly at Zandvoort, where crowd pressure and expectation amplify every lap spent bottled behind traffic or every delayed cover that hands rivals an opening. Verstappen is a driver who channels emotion into pace, while bureaucracy translates emotion into friction, leaving him vulnerable to frustration in front of his home fans. Mekies' priority is organizational calm, race debriefs that align with Thursday's plans, sponsor comfort, and technical reviews that are clean and predictable. Yet that may alienate Verstappen, who built his legend on stepping beyond the margins. The knock-on effects are not limited to races, but extend into qualifying as well. If conservative setups blunt the car's front-end bite, Verstappen may need multiple laps to build confidence where one lap previously sufficed, altering tire preparation, outlap traffic management, and exposing him to Zandvoort's rhythm-disrupting yellow flags and cool-down trains. Losing qualifying sharpness compromises grid position, and at Zandvoort, grid position is half the battle. Specific race scenarios highlight the contrast. An early virtual safety car on lap 10 with mediums fading? Old Red Bull would pit Verstappen for hards, trust him to defend track position. New Red Bull would only stop if strict thresholds are cleared. Tire degradation spikes on the lead car? Old Red Bull lets Verstappen pit off sequence to trigger rival reactions. New Red Bull stays inside model windows. Light rain skirts the circuit? Old Red Bull splits compounds, letting Verstappen improvise with torque maps. New Red Bull maintains symmetry for constructor safety. Even tire choices that once favored aggressive soft starts are boxed in, replaced by safer mediums. On Racecraft, he should pre-establish short codes for rain proximity, traffic risk, or brake, where that accelerate approvals without requiring full pit wall debate. Verstappen must also ensure the second Red Bull strategy is angled toward giving him clean air, not just median constructors' outcomes. And finally, he must weaponize the orange wall, turning fan pressure into inevitability. If he starts from pole, half the bureaucratic drag evaporates, reducing the race to pace management. If he starts deeper, he must bait rivals into errors, manipulate pit wall timings by faking degradation, and force rivals into unfavorable release slots. The paradox of Zandvoort 2025 is simple. The more centralized Red Bull becomes under Mekies, the more Verstappen must decentralize his influence during preparation. The Dutch Grand Prix will not just be a battle between Verstappen and his rivals on track, but between Verstappen and the corporate processes reshaping Red Bull from ruthless to robust. His ability to bend this structure without breaking it may define not only his home race, but his trajectory within a team that risks muting the very instinct that made it unbeatable.